That saying, time heals all wounds, I don't believe that. You can find a way to manage those wounds and that grief a little bit better as time goes on.
Time, I think, can lower the blow a little bit and maybe the pain fades, but I think it depends what you do at that time and how you manage it.
And I remember looking at him one time and he was just kind of staring off. I said, "What are you thinking about, bud?" And he said, "I'm thinking about death." Since then, I found some things that he wrote to other people. And he said, "My dad and I are quite a team." I'm glad he thought that I was on his team.
Appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I do want to ask you, it hasn't been that long. It's 2024 when Mac died.
Yeah.
And so
January 5th.
January 5th. So what compelled you to talk with me? I mean, because a lot of people I've spoken to throughout life on and off the record, it's a hard conversation, which is the big premise behind the show. What is it about opening up about this conversation that brings you here today?
We lost Mac to a very, very rare cancer called chordoma that he was diagnosed with in summer of 2018. And he started that fight. Rare, by rare, I mean like super rare. Under 100 people are diagnosed with this particular cancer every year in the U.S. So, of course, there's no drugs to fight it. And they threw whatever they could come up with at it, including surgeries and radiation. And he fought for 5.5 years, and we lost him on January 5th, 2024. Shortly after that, about maybe 6 weeks after that, we had there's a foundation called the Chordoma Foundation that was very helpful for us, started by a guy who had chordoma and survived. And he started that, and they were doing research, and it was a good resource for where are the clinical trials, who are the doctors, and all of that. And we started on that website. My daughter put together a it was called Team Mac, and it was people that we had a lot of people that we knew kept asking us, how can we help? What can we do? And we weren't really, these were all personal friends generally, or people that I had engaged with who I happened to let know what was going on. And so we started this Team Mac page, and it kind of grew, with people who wanted to support the Chordoma Foundation and who also wanted to send Mac messages, supportive messages. After he died, I thought it was necessary to let all those folks know what had happened. And so I started writing something to let them know. And then I thought, I have my own foundation, the Gary Sinise Foundation. We have a lot of supporters who've been with us for a long time. Mac was a member of the team at the Gary Sinise Foundation. I'm going to take what I wrote for the Chordoma Foundation and expand it and go ahead and let people know what we'd been going through for the past 6 years while I'm doing all this other stuff for the military and everything. And so we did that. We posted that up, and we got this overwhelming response to it. It's right on the homepage of the Gary Sinise Foundation still. The media picked it up. Millions of people saw it. I'm not exaggerating. Just alone, one buddy of mine has 5 million followers on X, and he posted it up like 3 times, and so millions of people saw it just from that one post. So it went all over the place, and I started getting requests from the media. Do I want to talk about it? Do I want to come on and say? So I did a couple of stories. I did a couple of media interviews where they asked me like this about Mac, what had happened. And they asked me if I'd like to share anything. And I did that. And then I did it again. And it made me think a lot about what we're always telling our service members at my foundation and the organizations that I support that are trying to help service members who are struggling with their own grief of losing buddies, their own post-traumatic stress and their pent-up, quite often just containing all this stuff, not sharing it at all. And at the foundation, through these organizations, we're always telling people, don't do that. Tell your story. Learn how to tell your story. Share your story. People are interested. People want to know about your buddies that you may have lost, your family members. There are people out there that are interested. Whenever I see somebody wearing a memory band of somebody they lost in service, I've done this enough for a number of years to know that if I say, who is that? Mm-hmm. Who's that band? Tell me about your buddy. I know that they'll want to tell me about that person. So sharing stories is a great, it's a great healer. It's a way to process grief. It's a way to not store up and contain all the things that you're feeling that could bottle up into something that it slows you down. And so I've accepted that, and I'm sharing the story. Mac has a good story, even though it's a tragic story of losing him and everything like that. There are many blessings in his story, and if by sharing it we can help somebody else kind of deal with their own grief, and that's what you do on this show, then that's a really positive thing. We all go through grief. We all go through loss. There's no escape. That's a human experience. So how do different people process it, and how do different people kind of manage it? And it really is managing, right? Mm-hmm. You lost your dad. In the beginning, it was very, very very difficult. You don't know how you're going to deal with it. You're trying your best. And as time goes on, the hole doesn't fill up, and the memories don't go away. But what happens? You learn how to manage it a little bit better as time goes on. That saying, "Time heals all wounds," I don't believe that. But you can find a way to manage those wounds and that grief a little bit better as time goes on.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with something that I align with in regards to how you say time doesn't heal, like time heals all wounds, and you question that a little bit. I've always felt like it depends on what you do with that time. You know what I mean? Like time, I think, can lower the blow a little bit, and maybe the pain fades or it doesn't pop up as much sometimes. But I think it depends what you do with that time and how you manage it throughout.
Well, you learn how to manage it a little bit better. You and I both could start thinking about your dad and my son, and we could get choked up, so it's there, mm-hmm. That's not going away. You just, in the beginning, it's just, you're crying every minute, mm-hmm. You're thinking about it every minute. You're feeling like you should have done this, or you should have said that, or I wish I'd done this, or I wish I'd done that. But as time presses forward, and sharing the story is a good part of that healing, you do learn how to just manage it and keep it in check, keep the emotions, in check in a way. And, you should let those emotions out when they come. That's yes. Just part of love. You love that person, and letting those emotions kind of come is a part of loving them back, and telling them, through your grief that you miss them, that you care about them, and you're not going to forget them.
Yeah, and especially what you said earlier about how if you don't let it out, and even just the power of just sharing a story where you're telling a story, you're not exactly expressing how you feel necessarily. Maybe that comes within the story, but it's that actual release of whatever's inside of us. And if you don't, you being the general you, if you don't release it in some kind of healthier way, it does build up in who knows what other way it could come out. And so it is important throughout that management process to find a way to release it, whether it's through stories or any other outlets.
Well, and just to kind of finish that thought.
Yeah.
Like I said, we have a lot of programs at the Gary Sinise Foundation where we are encouraging our service members to tell their stories. And so if I would do that for them, and try to encourage them, and we have programs that teach them how to tell their stories and all that kind of thing. People that have lost, like a child who's lost a mom or a dad in the war or something, teaching them how to tell their stories as a part of healing. If I would be kind of hypocritical, wouldn't I? If I would tell them, tell your stories and share your stories, and then, not kind of do the same thing, in our particular situation. So, I know it works. I know it works to share, and it's a good positive thing.
I mean, it's commendable. It's commendable because I'm sure that first time you had to do it, did it feel like it reopened? Even though I'm sure it was still opened. I mean,
Oh gosh, just getting through it.
Yeah,
it's just getting through it
exactly.
without just breaking down and everything. There were a few times I just had to stop, because I was sharing some things that I was feeling and thinking and remembering and all that just I started to talk about without realizing I was going to talk about them. And then the emotions just welled up, and you have to stop. I remember I did something fairly early on after, like I said, I posted that story and media picked it up and it was all over the place. And Entertainment Tonight contacted me and they said, we'd love for you to share your story. Would you like to do that? I thought about it for a bit and I said, okay, come on over. And they set up at my office and I sat down with them, and she was very, very nice. And she allowed me to take all the time I needed to answer her questions. And there were times during that where I had trouble, but I looked at it later and I thought, I think maybe by somebody like me who's in the public eye sharing a story of just being human and losing somebody and everything, that perhaps that's going to help somebody kind of process their own thing, and maybe by me sharing and showing that I'm willing to do that, maybe others will find a benefit in that. And I hope that's why I'm sitting here right now.
Yeah, no, it's there's no doubt. There's no doubt. Every story that I've had on the show, it's going to help someone, and that's the one thing. You should be human. I don't know what's more human than dealing with grief and death. Like if I had to find one commonality between everyone, I don't know what else there is. They say death and taxes. Not everyone pays their taxes. It's like you're left with death, and I say it all the time because it's true. And throughout that management process that you're mentioning, and I'm curious about what that path's been for you and your family. It is different. It's truly different for everyone, even within the family dynamic. And that's what makes it so complicated to manage, because we all handle our emotions and things that go through life, let alone grief, in our own way. And it can be complicated, but just by sharing your story, I implore people to, pull things from what you're saying, but also it makes you think about how you're going through it just by hearing other stories. And it might not align perfectly, because I don't know if that ever happens. But when you find that commonality of some sort of emotion going through your own grief, it's comforting to know, again, you're not alone. Because the people, I mean, even during my experience, I have an incredible family. I'm blessed to have and I almost think it's a cheat code to have gotten through what we've gone through, because I have my sisters, my mom. I often don't even want to take credit, because I'm like, I have the strongest woman in the world, in my opinion. And I have that. But even within that support system, it can feel isolating, because you're grieving within a family, if we're blessed to have that family. But at the same time, you're still grieving individually. So it's a weird, isolating experience.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean. In the beginning, you're all grieving at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Remember those early moments? Everybody's crying at the same time. Everybody's going through sisters, brother, all the family. Everybody's going through the same thing at the same moment all the time. Everybody's feeling the same thing right away. And then as time goes on, I've noticed that, sometimes my daughter will just start crying. And it's kind of not my turn, to start crying with her again. It's my turn to just console her and comfort her. Sometimes my wife will just be thinking about something and cry, and I'll just hold her. Sometimes it's me, and they won't want to go there, but they know what I'm going through, and they'll be there for me. And everybody goes through kind of a different thing, at a different moment. But you always sort of know that in tandem, you all have the same thing in common. You all have that loss. You all have that missing. You all have those memories, that are constantly there, and that's what helps each other through. I mean, I've noticed that, that I'll just start getting choked up, and my daughter just put her hand on my shoulder, whereas in the beginning, she'd burst into tears, and we'd all be crying at the same time.
Yeah, and you also said something earlier in relation to this experience that you guys have gone through. I don't know if I forget. I'm sorry if I'm slipping up with the words. Lessons or the beauty of the story, and that's a recognition that's often hard to even say those words during an experience when you lose someone. To find beauty, it's such a contradiction often at times. But again, I've lost a lot of people since my father, but when I was 12, and it's been a long road, it's been 24 years, give or take, and I found those little passages, those little shines of light that do come from this dark experience. And it's amazing for you to even notice that and be aware of the little beauties of having that family, those little moments, because even though it seems like modalities to get through the grief, it's like those little support systems. It's like the hand on your shoulder. It's like that, those little moments are the beautiful part of it. And I've talked to so many people on this show, and one of the things I pull from it is like it's okay to still find a little bit of joy, even if it's for a blink, even if it's for a moment, even if it's a laugh or whatever you're looking at on the TV. It's like it's okay to find those little moments. And I think those little moments of laughter or whatever those moments are can help extrapolate the entire experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you absolutely need them.
And some people feel guilty for having those moments. You know what I mean? Like it's like, why am I laughing when this is happening? You know what I mean?
You know what? Yeah, I mean we're all grieving. I mean, there's Mac died. It's a year and a half now. I mean, it'll be 2 years in January. It's very fresh. I mean, it's not like it's gone and it's a thing in the past. It's very fresh, but you need those moments of levity, to just get to push on. What choice do we have? I mean, we're going to either push on. You're going to crawl up in a ball in the corner, or you're going to get up and say, your dad, my son, they don't want us in the corner, crawled up,
right?
in a fetal position, paralyzed by what happened to them. They want us to go forward and live our lives as best we can, and to make a difference in the world. And that's what you're doing. You have decided to take your grief experience and turn it into something positive. And that, I think that's, I've found so many people, like within the military community or something like that, parents that have lost a son or a daughter. And they've created foundations in their name. They've decided to raise money to help fellow soldiers. They're doing something that would honor that person's life, and that person would be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know my son, I've been very, very busy promoting music that he wrote and, sharing the sort of the blessings of knowing him and the courage that he faced his cancer with and everything. And I know he's proud of that. He's no doubt proud and maybe somewhat embarrassed.
Well, you did your job as a little embarrassed.
Yeah, about his dad talking about him so much and everything like that. But I can. Sometimes I break into a smile because I can just picture him, because he was a very humble kind of sort of guy. But really, I in some ways, in looking for information about my son and studying some of the things that he wrote and finding things on his iPhone and iPad and, Dropbox files and all these things, I've discovered a lot of things about my son that have really kind of knocked me out.
Wow.
That I didn't necessarily know about. Good positive things and things that he was doing kind of just to help himself through the cancer fight. And maybe he thought later on Dad would find a lot of this stuff, if I just lay it all down for him.
I mean, those are powerful because, again, I could go down the list of people that, we've all lost outside of the ones we're discussing now, but it's the painful part. I posted something recently. I'll keep this tangent short, I promise. But I was thinking about how everything's evolved for me in my experience specific to my father. And now the hardest part for me as a man at 36, I was 12 then, is I was like, oh shit, I never knew my dad when I was a man, and my dad only knew me as a boy. So I was like, I never got the chance to have that man to man. Never got to have the chance that a father son could have man to man, and AKA these new experiences, more or less. And it's like the new experience. It's grieving a future that we never got a chance to have. So when you have these little moments of discovering new things about your son, even though he's not here physically, it's like those are powerful moments. You're almost creating new memories in not the same way we would wish. But you're able to have these little micro new experiences about your son, even though he's not here. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and we want to do things that we want to live a life of purpose and service that they would be proud of, right? You want your dad to be proud of you, the man that you grew up to be, and how you've decided to live your life, and how you've decided to clearly try to provide a service for others who might be going through the same thing that you're doing. I do the same thing with the military work and all the work that I've loved doing over the years. I met just on a 9/11 story. My relationship to the FDNY and New York City goes back to a gentleman who I met, who was a legendary firefighter in New York and Marine. He served in the Marine Corps. I met him on the first trip that I took to Iraq, and he had lost two sons in the Trade Center. One was a firefighter, and the other was a police officer, and he lost them both on the day. He spent just days and days and days looking for them at the site. Right? They only found one, and he turned his life in. I mean, he was an extraordinary man before that, just a legendary guy that all the firefighters in New York looked up to. His name's John Vigiano. Easily findable story.
Sounds a little Italian.
Yeah, amazing guy. We became good friends. I met him on my first trip to Iraq, and he was on the airplane we were going over. And he introduced me to the FDNY, and he spent his life, after losing his sons, just serving others. I mean, he did it. He would go down to Walter Reed every month and, serve food down there. And we just paired up and did a whole bunch of good things together. And I ended up supporting a lot of FDNY efforts. There's a memorial in Coney Island. I don't know if you know the Brooklyn Wall of Remembrance.
No, I actually don't.
You know the ballpark out there?
Yeah.
So right on the side of the wall, the outside wall of the ballpark, there's 417 faces in granite of every first responder and the fire department chaplain, Father Michael Judge, that were killed on September 11th. All their faces are there.
Wow, I don't know.
And it's called the Brooklyn Wall of Remembrance. And some buddies of mine at the Brooklyn Firehouse that I went to, that John invited me to, took me out to see it. And they had put all the Brooklyn firefighters up there. And they told me that their goal was to put everybody up there that had been lost. So they needed to raise more money. So I did a concert at Brooklyn College in 2007 and raised the rest of the money to finish that wall. That was a service, effort that my heart was broken after September 11th. I mean, I didn't lose anybody personally, but it was a blow to our country, and it was a fearful time for everybody, and it was hard to watch, and it was hard to deal with. So I just turned that into action, and that service mission of supporting the FDNY and folks in New York and everything became a big part of what I was doing before I had my own foundation. And it was a way to channel my own grief about that particular time. And Mac came to work for the foundation. He met the firefighters that had become very, very dear friends of mine. He was there's a story right on the homepage of the Gary Sinise Foundation about Mac and his work at the Gary Sinise Foundation. And I know that my relationship with New York and everything that turned into a full-on service mission. Our first responder outreach at the Gary Sinise Foundation. Now we've provided millions of dollars worth of support to fire departments and police departments all across the country and we wouldn't have had that if I hadn't have gone to that firehouse in Brooklyn in 2003.
It's incredible. What do you think that is about the service? You think it's just human nature, or do you think that offers some kind of meaning and purpose behind?
I think it's a primary ingredient in living a good life.
Mm-hmm.
We all feel good when we do something to make somebody smile, right? Even if you just give them a little gift that you brought them from your trip to Honolulu or whatever, and you thought about them over there when you saw the thing,
mm-hmm.
and I'm going to get this for my buddy and give it to him, and then he laughs, and that's one little gesture of giving, right? That can change somebody's whole day and make them feel good. And when you turn those little gestures into a big effort where you earn the trust of the American people and they start donating to you because they like what you're doing out there to give and to give back, that gives life a lot of great purpose. And I've found that service is a great healer in that way.
Yeah, and the key word is purpose. Again, I don't pigeonhole everyone's experiences, but you notice patterns and this and that, and it's the purpose and meaning. Because I feel like when you lose someone, especially a child, like when it comes to, again, I lost my dad, but losing a child, I can't think of life's greatest challenge in regards to going through what you and your family and many others have gone through. But when you lose someone or someone dies, it's almost like a purpose dissipates because you were a father and I was a son, yada yada, and it's like there's a loss of purpose and meaning when you lose someone. So it's like filling a void that can never be filled, but it extrapolates into helping other people. So I see where the service is such a healing mechanism, but it's also hard to just start that when you're grieving and when you're going through it. It's like that starting effect must be one of the biggest steps to take, is just getting going.
I'll tell you what, the fact that I have a full-time foundation has been around many years, and I've been doing this a long, long time and been to the hospitals multiple times and seen families, with broken heroes laying in the beds, and they're trying to deal with it and get through it. And it's one surgery after another, and grieving families who've lost a loved one in military service, children, thousands of children that we support at the Gary Sinise Foundation who've lost a mom or a dad serving our country, first responders, firefighters who have fallen, police officers who have fallen, children that have gone through that terrible grief, and seeing how all of them are managing it and dealing with it and processing it, having done that for so long, and having continued to do that through our cancer fight, as our son became more and more disabled, more and more challenged by what the cancer was doing to his body. All that action, all that service throughout that time was super helpful for me. Mac did not want me just to stay home and stay in his room. He had to have a hospital bed and all that stuff. He was really disabled by it. But he did not want me just to stay there and stop doing the mission. He was in support of the mission. He loved the mission. He loved what I was doing. And so I continued. I may have backed off some as he became more challenged. And my wife had cancer at the same time that he was diagnosed, and it was a challenging time. I may have backed off a bit and shifted some things and said no a little bit more than I said yes or something like that, but I continued to go out, play concerts for troops, go to the hospitals, do build houses, do the things that we do at the Gary Sinise Foundation. And all of that service work just helped me replenish and gain strength to fight our own battle at home. So I would recommend that to anybody. We all know that, like I said, if you're having a bad day, and there's probably somebody down the block who's having a worse day,
Yes. Yeah.
and maybe you can kind of change their day a little bit, which will, in effect, change your own day.
Yeah, and sometimes we picture these, like, when people lose someone or things we got to do. It doesn't always have to be this massive thing in a sense of a show or a foundation. Great, if we can do that, please do that. But at the same time, I think it just ultimately comes down to the little things. You said those little gestures that just stuck out to me, because it's like those little gestures to me represents just the way we live our life, right? Like from the day-to-day stuff, and that you don't know what a little gesture, like you mentioned, can affect someone's life, even if it's a wave or whatever it may be. A small, tiny thing can have such a big ripple effect. So I think when people are going through grief or whatever it may be, specifically to this conversation, it's like, okay, what can you do? It's just at least start with the way we live our life. It doesn't, again, there's not to be this massive move to create a massive movement. If you want to aim to that, great. But it's just, again, the little things that we do every single day carry our loved one with us and affects the rest of the world.
The first thing I always say is exactly that. People ask me how they can help, what they can do, what should they do, And while I say, hey, you can certainly donate to a good foundation like the Gary Sinise Foundation, who's doing a lot of different things out there, you can make donations and everything. But the first thing I always say is look in your own neighborhood, look in your own community, look in your own town and city, your own state. There are folks, like in my particular area of military and first responder support, there are veterans and military families in every town and city in the country, and they may be going through something difficult. So you don't have to go out and start a 501c3 and try to become a national organization. But if everybody in the country took a little bit of responsibility to say, hey, there's an opportunity here to help somebody who is defending our country, protecting our cities, they're giving of themselves, I benefit from that. If I can take a moment to go pick up some groceries for them, or pay the car bill or whatever it is, do something, take the kids to school for them. Those little gestures can make a big difference. I always take the time when I'm in an airport to go up and shock some soldier who's walking through there and pat him on the back and say, hey, thank you for doing that. And you never know, sometimes they may have just lost a couple of buddies or something like that. And they may be going through a really rough day. And that gesture of support and appreciation and gratitude and remembrance and recognition that what they're doing matters to you can change their whole day, maybe their whole week.
Yeah, it vibrates. It vibrates out. And again, it's just this little tiny thing. It's cliche for a reason. But I feel like anyone that's going through anything, it's like there's little steps. It's like you don't have to make a giant leap right away, because there's giant leaps. I don't know if they exist, to be honest, but it's those little tiny steps. And I do want to ask you in regards to, I know we spoke a lot about the last year and a half and what it's been going through, but what was it like leading up? Because did Mac have a 5.5 year battle? Do I have that correct, give or take?
Yes, that we knew about. I mean, the tumor that he had is something that starts in the spine, and it's a very, very slow growing tumor. So we can't know for sure, but there's a very real possibility that could have been growing since birth. He could have had cancer in his spine for 30 some years before we discovered it, and actually he was 27 when we discovered the tumor. He was having a lot of problems in his tailbone, and just sitting was uncomfortable for him. And he was a drummer, and he was this amazing drummer. If you go to Mac Sinise YouTube, you'll see videos of his music there. We just posted last week a video of Mac playing the drums that he made in 2015. And he was a superb drummer. Really, really a talented guy. But just drumming started to hurt, I mean, it started to hurt to play drums, and he was like, and then he started carrying this like cushion around. Like he'd go to the movies or go to a restaurant, and he'd carry a cushion with him, sit on it. And we thought it was like he was on tour overseas. And, during the day, one day the band decided to get some bikes and go for a bike ride in, I don't know, the Netherlands or wherever it was. And he jammed on the brakes at one point and jammed his tailbone into the seat, and he had excruciating pain. I mean, so much so that he just almost fell off the bike and just couldn't, wasn't sure what was going on there. And so he thought, and we thought, that he maybe had bruised his tailbone, had fractured his tailbone or something like that, something that's really hard to kind of correct. A fractured tailbone is something that's got to heal on its own. He had an X-ray, and it didn't show anything. So he would carry this cushion around and just think he had to deal with this tailbone bruise or fracture or something like that. And eventually it just got to the point where he couldn't sleep. And I was like, what is going on? This doesn't seem right. My wife had several spine surgeries herself. And so I called up her spine surgeon. I said, will you see Mac? Will you, take a look at him? He's having trouble with his tailbone. They put him in the CT scanner and the MRI, and bang, there was a giant orange size tumor like this on his sacrum.
Damn.
And in the MRI, they put this contrast stuff in. And so anything that's not supposed to be there will light up. And you see this big thing just lit up surrounding his sacrum at the bottom of his spine. And the doctor called me and said, Mac has a tumor. And I jumped in the car and I went down to the office, and Mac was there, and we looked at this thing, and now we knew. All this time that we thought he had a tailbone fracture or a bruised tailbone, it was a giant tumor on his spine. And then we started, and then the doctor said, I think this is something called a chordoma. And he's a very experienced spine surgeon, but he hadn't had a lot of experience with this because it's so rare. So he introduced us to an expert in removing chordomas. And that began our fight in the summer of 2018. September 2018, Mac had that tumor removed. And we were very hopeful because you have a 70% chance of getting rid of it by removing the tumor. And of course, that means there's a 30% chance that the cancer could recur and come back. Unfortunately, 8 months later, we got the bad news that the cancer had come back and was starting to spread. And then you're into radiation and chemotherapy. And of course, with a cancer so rare, they're not developing any drugs to fight it. So you just start throwing other cancer drugs at it, see if you can, get something. As I said, there was a foundation called the Chordoma Foundation. It was started by a young guy who was 18 when he had chordoma, and they became a great resource for us. And, they knew different doctors that were experts in it, and they knew where the clinical trials were. And so we started that fight. Mac had several more surgeries after that because the tumors were growing on his spine. Eventually to the point where he was fused with rods and screws from the top of his spine all the way down to the bottom of his thoracic spine. So he couldn't twist or do any of this stuff that we do. He had to kind of look at you like this. Mm. He'd be in the hospital bed, and if you're over here, he'd say, "Can you come over here?" Because he couldn't turn his head.
Yeah.
And he was really disabled by the cancer, but he kept fighting. He did 24 different drugs within a 4.5-year period to try to fight the cancer, and he kept fighting all the way to the end. the last year of his life, he hadn't been thinking about music much because he couldn't play drums. He was disabled. He was fighting cancer. He was, trying to keep his fight up. And early 2023, he said he told me he had a piece of music that he never finished in college, that he'd been thinking about a lot, and he thought he wanted to finish it. So he went to work on it with some of my band members, and then a buddy of his came into the picture that he knew from college, named Oliver Schnee, and Oliver and Mac finished this piece called Arctic Circles. And they went into the studio. That's kind of started February, where he started thinking about it. In June, he played the piece for Oliver, and then Oliver went to work with him to finish it. By July, they were in the studio with an orchestra playing this gorgeous piece. Have you heard it?
I watched the video. It's beautiful.
It's an amazingly beautiful, emotional piece. And you could see me in the video just sitting there going, whoa, I didn't know my son was working on this. I had no idea. And that led to the creation of a whole album that by the end of the year, there were 10 songs on a record that he calls Resurrection and Revival. Max Sinise, Resurrection and Revival. That record's available at the Gary Sinise Foundation website. The vinyl, you can download it. There's another record that I put together after he died because I found all this music that he wrote and tucked away on his laptop. Just a bunch of stuff I'd never heard before. Mm. And recently, one of those pieces that he wrote it for the foundation, stored it over here, never played it for me. I never heard it. It's a very patriotic kind of anthem, trumpets and timpanis and all this stuff. Well, it's so beautiful. It's called The Rise. There's a video of The Rise that's on that Max Sinise YouTube. Well, the National Symphony Orchestra, I'm one of the co-hosts of the National Memorial Day concert on PBS every year. I've been doing it for 20 years.
That's good.
National Symphony Orchestra, there's a choir, all these actors come and tell stories of, service and that kind of thing. The National Symphony Orchestra this year played Mac's piece.
That's badass.
Called The Rise. I'm up there talking about World War II and introducing all these World War II veterans that are 98 and 100 years old. And Mac's music is backing me up while I'm saying it.
Unreal.
The fact that they played it, that should tell you how good it is. The National Symphony is not going to play anything that's not good.
It wasn't just a favorite, yeah.
No. I mean, they would have said, Gare, thanks, for playing it for us, but, we got plenty of music.
Yeah.
They played it.
That's badass.
Because it's good. And a lot of the music is really good. And The Rise is actually on the second record, Resurrection and Revival Part 2. And you know what? I'll tell you a story. Right before Memorial Day, I got a text from our vice president of marketing at the Gary Sinise Foundation. And it was a story, an online story that Forbes had written. And it was about Mac's 2 records, Resurrection and Revival Part 2. Both of them had hit the top 10 most downloaded records in America on iTunes that week. The first one was number 6, and the second one was number 9. And this people like Blake Shelton and Bruce Springsteen are on the top 10. They're getting downloaded like crazy. And there's Max Sinise. Right? And at one point, one of the records had dropped down to number 29. Number 28 was Lady Gaga. And number 30 was Britney Spears. And there's Max Sinise right in the middle of Lady Gaga and Britney Spears. So the music is really good. People are spreading the word on it. People are downloading it. People are buying the vinyls, and all the proceeds for the vinyl, as Mac wanted, go to the Gary Sinise Foundation to support our mission.
That's a whole nother level of living on. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm fortunate that he was so talented, first of all, but that he left all this music and that I discovered it. Mm-hmm. I got to watch him make the first record. And the timing of getting the record done just before he died was incredible. It's God at work, He finished that album, we had a viewing party for the new videos for the rest of the first record, because they made the Arctic Circles video in the summer. And then we went into the studio again in November and finished the record. Mac finished the record. My band plays on it and everything. Mm-hmm. The videos are on his YouTube channel. And then we made new videos from the November sessions. And 2 days before Mac had to go into the hospital for the last time, we had a party at the house to listen to the music and watch the videos. And then he's in the hospital, and 6 days later he died. So he finished the record. You know, it was a blessing that he had that music to keep his focus and to keep him inspired through the last year of his life is pretty incredible. And we never stopped counting our blessings in that way. I mean, he finished it. He heard it. He heard all the music. He didn't get to hold the vinyl record that he wanted, but he designed the cover and everything. And we ordered a bunch of them, and we started selling them at Gary Sinise Foundation. And now we've sold over 8,000 vinyl copies of his records on the foundation website.
Oh, I got a vinyl to pick up about 10 minutes after you leave. So that's a beautiful.
You pick up the vinyl.
Yeah, I'm going to grab
because there's some great content in there. There's photographs, and I wrote a bunch of stuff and everything. But you can also download it on your phone.
I'm going to get the vinyl. Don't worry.
You got a record player?
I mean, I don't have one. But
you got to get one.
Because on the way here, the way here, I was thinking about it because I replayed the Arctic song on the way here, and I was like closing my eyes, just like listening to it, literally on like the Uber here. And then I had a flashback when I was with my buddies a couple months ago, and we were playing his records. And I said to him, I was like, I got to get a vinyl. How do I not have a record player? He has them all on this wall. Oh, and on the way here, when I was closing my eyes, I was like, I need to get a record player. So now I'm going to get the vinyl. I'm going to get a record player.
Get both of them, part one and part two. There, I found more music too. So who knows? There might be another one.
And I'll put as usual. I'm going to share all the links for anyone that's new to the show. So we'll put all on the show.
The music is great. I mean, he was a talented guy. He wrote a lot of different types of stuff. It's good.
Yeah, I got a taste, and it was. I didn't have any expectation. I was like, let's just listen to it. But no, it was incredibly moving. And of course, when you pack the story behind it too, it has that extra existential, deeper punch. You know what I mean? Like beyond it just being objectively moving. Like then on the way, I was putting myself in a weird place because I was getting ready to talk to you, and I heard the song. I was getting a little emotional, but I don't want to talk. We don't have to get into my emotions. But I do want to ask you one question in regards to that process leading up to it during this time that we just kind of covered. Do you remember like what the conversations were with your son leading up to it, with the ups and downs of his process and the family dynamic about how you were approaching it verbally or amongst each other?
I mean, as he was fighting?
Yeah, as he was fighting and like leading up to the time of his.
I assumed kind of the role of the platoon leader, I was, or the air traffic controller or something like that, where I'm managing all the medical stuff. I'm talking to the doctors. I'm setting the appointments. I'm trying to find the drugs. I'm looking at all the trials. I'm busy with a lot of that kind of stuff so that Mac could just try to enjoy each day that he had. It was tough enough to kind of deal with, okay, he's got a treatment now today, and now he's going to feel crappy for the next 2 or 3 days. And I didn't want him thinking about cancer all the time, and he didn't, he was grateful for that. He knew that I was going to handle that kind of stuff. And we had help, our daughters would pitch in, our niece would pitch in. We have these wonderful housekeepers, been with us for years. They're like Mac's second mamas, and they would be all over. We had to hire in-home nursing. That's something that's not covered by insurance, but again, we count our blessings all the time and Mac knew, hey, if you got to deal with something like this, we're blessed because Dad did okay, in the movie business. And I could afford to take care of him in that way. So I took on a lot of that kind of stuff so that he wouldn't have to talk about cancer all the time. I didn't even want to have that conversation with him,
Mm-hmm.
what if conversation, because even though he had what we knew was an incurable cancer, I don't know, for me, and I think probably there are a lot of other caregivers out there that can kind of relate to this. You don't want to give in to the what if, you know. You don't want to have that conversation, because does that mean that you're giving up? Does that mean you're not in the fight anymore? And so I didn't even have that conversation with him in the hospital at the end, you know. I guess in some ways there are things that I wish I'd talked to him about, you know. Certainly in discovering a lot of the music I discovered, I wish I'd known about it so that I could talk to him about what he was thinking and when he wrote it, and get some more information about some of the things he was doing. I had one conversation with him once, maybe two. There was one about an account that he had, a savings account. And I kind of wanted to know, like, what would, you're not spending any of that money now. You're you're in the cancer fight. You're not spending any of the money. What do you think you'd want to do with that? And he told me. And then there was one other time where he was in the hospital, and I spent countless days and weeks and stuff in the hospital with him. Primarily, occasionally our daughter would be able to stay with him or something like that. But I stayed with him in the hospital quite a bit on the recliner next to the hospital bed. And I remember looking at him one time, and he was just kind of staring off. And I said, "What are you thinking about, bud?" And he said, "I'm thinking about death." And it was after his fifth spine surgery, and he was in the hospital for 4 months at that time. And he had already been in the hospital that year for 2 months, and then he came out for 2, and then went back in for 4. And I think, and it's the only time I talked to him about any of that kind of thing. I didn't want him thinking about that. So I said, "Well, let's talk about something else. We're fighting now, Mac. You're a fighter. We're in it together." I was like his battle buddy with him. And since then, I've found some things that he wrote to other people. He said, "My dad and I are quite a team fighting this." He wrote to somebody recently. I found that email, and I'm glad he thought that I was on his team. And I was gonna. He said, "My dad's taken care of a lot of that stuff, and it was the best thing I've ever done." I'll tell you, I just turned 70. I've never dealt with anything harder than losing a son. No emotions that I've had in my life can compare or kind of match that. So it's a kind of a new thing for me. I wasn't ever a big emotional guy who gets all choked up and cries at the drop of a hat and everything like that. But since losing Mac, those emotions are much freer. And I think it's, in some ways it's just, when you do that, when it's emotion that comes up because of somebody you love like that, in a way, it's just you're shooting messages out to them that you love them, and you remember them, and you won't forget them.
You see the world so differently, huh?
Yeah.
Like everything looks different.
Yeah, losing a child is hard, and my heart is so broken for the people in Texas right now, and there were floods that we dealt with here in North Carolina and Tennessee not too long ago. The hurricanes in Florida, which ravaged things. But when you see so many children, like taken from us in a tragic event like that and everything, like, my heart goes out to them. I know what grieving the loss of a child is, and losing one like that, just in the blink of an eye like that, very, very difficult. And my heart goes out to anybody who's lost a child. I mean, like I said, we're all human. We're all going to lose people. Things are going to happen in life, and you don't know. You try to make a plan, but God has other plans.
No, at this point in my life, I make a plan that my plan's going to get destroyed one way or another.
Yeah.
not in a negative way. Always, sometimes it's negative, but it's the we'll see kind of mentality. Gary, I appreciate you opening up like this, and I know you've done it before, but again, it resonates with me because especially the man-to-man conversation. I've noticed over the years of my podcast, there's a heavily sway towards women and men. It's like 60-40 or 70-30, because I think the importance of a man be able to just discuss how they feel in general. You don't gotta like hold hands and cry, but at the same time, these conversations mean the world to me, because I know there's plenty of other fathers that have lost a son, plenty of other parents, and I don't go with the hierarchy of which loss is worse, this, that, and the other. But again, losing a child is I can't think of a bigger battle when it comes to this experience. So I commend you for the service that you're doing. I commend you for willing to talk about it, even when it brings up emotions that clearly are raw, and it's only been a year and a half. It's tremendous just to hear your words and what you've gone through, and you and your family. And I want to send you guys love. And
Thank you.
It's going to continue to evolve, as I'm sure you've noticed this within the year and a half. But you're doing tremendous work, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to sit across from you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, yeah. And I know your words are going to help plenty of people out there, as they already have. And I'm just honored to have the opportunity to give you a little bit more reach, even though I think people know you a lot more than me. But other than that, is there anything else that you want to get off your chest before I get you out of here? I know you got some family to pick up.
Gosh, no, that's just, my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who's dealing with what they're dealing with in Texas. And my foundation immediately reached out to our first responders there. We're going to we have a disaster relief program at the Gary Sinise Foundation. We've been, engaged in, tornadoes and hurricanes and floods and fires and all of that, trying to help out where we can. So if people are interested in supporting, you can go to the Gary Sinise Foundation and look at that, and look at the Mac Sinise stuff there. Mac was an inspiring guy, and he left a lot of great music. We're trying to make sure people get to hear it. And again, the proceeds from the vinyls that you're going to buy go to the Gary Sinise Foundation to help us, and we can do a lot of good with that. It's a service mission that has been a big part of my life over the years, and I've met extraordinary people through all of this who are very, very giving, very charitable, and that they all know that processing grief, you need to do something with that. You need to find a way to do it, and service can be a great way to manage that.
Amen. And obviously your son is an inspiring guy. Clearly you're an inspiring guy, so the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. But Guy, I appreciate your time. And I'll probably actually cut up that last clip you said about Texas. It's more immediate, and maybe I'll plug something about your foundation before the episode comes out. But
thank you.
I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
For everyone else, thank you for tuning in, and find the links in the bio for his foundation, his Max music and all that. I'll plug that. So go help yourself and dig in. Thank you guys. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.